Howdy, ladies and gentlemen. This is Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Thomas Jefferson said, if you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do something you've never done. Benjamin Franklin said, without continual growth and progress, such words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning. Basically, get off your rumps and get to working. Set your goals and work towards them. Now then, I'm going to discuss education. Okay, this is from the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. Chairman Frank Lewis, a Republican from Oklahoma, has sent a letter to Dr. Okay, I'm going to butcher this poor person's name. I'm sorry. Arati Prabhakar, Director of White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, sharing concerns over delayed release of OSTP's 5-year Federal Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics (STEM) Education Strategic Plan for 2023 through 2028. The deadline for submitting the plan was December 31st of 2023. So in other words, you already had a year to get this thing out, and he failed to deliver it, or she. Let me take a look. I should have looked this person up beforehand. I've never even heard of this person. Dr. Roddy Prabhakar. Let's see here. It's a lady. So Dr. Prabhakar is an American engineer and public official. She is from New Delhi in India. Her education's at Texas Tech, Caltech, and she used to be the director of DARPA. Now there is a resume right there. Resume of DARPA. Okay. So, as the demand for high-wage, high-skill jobs increases and STEM workforce gap widens, our country's competitive edge relies on our already significant federal investments in STEM education and workforce development, Lucas stated. These investments include over 200 programs across more than 20 agencies that look to OSTP's leadership and timely guidance for coordination and direction. This is idiotic. Okay, let's take a look at Smithsonian. Has a page up that said, why invest in STEM education? Why should we support education in science, technology, engineering, mathematics? The answer is simple yet profound. We must all recognize that we live in an era of constant scientific discovery and technological change which directly affects our lives and requires our input as citizens. And we must recognize that our economy increasingly depends on these revolutionary new advances. Many new jobs will be created in STEM fields. I mean, seriously, science and technological issues increasingly dominate the national discourse, as it says here, from environmental debates on, okay, we're not even economic threats from invasive species to concerns about cloning, genetically modified food, and use of vaccines. We're talking about something that affects our lives every day. UTEP, University of Texas at El Paso, has 6 reasons why STEM education should happen. It increases innovative thinking, encourages curiosity, inspires creativity and ingenuity, fosters collaboration and communications, builds competence and teaches acceptance of failure, prepares students for high-demand careers. And it explains each one of those, of course. The average salary of a STEM worker is $95,420. So these are things, this country keeps moving away from manufacturing, so we've got to have something in this country, and STEM is very necessary to advance our futures. Take a look at what Elon Musk has done with SpaceX, Tesla. And by the way, interesting fact, I was listening to a Tesla employee. Tesla employees do not look at Tesla as a car company. They look at it as an information company. For each mile driven in one of the Tesla cars, information is sent to Tesla on the road conditions, on all of that stuff. It helps for various things. Might be a little intrusive, but it is supposed to help. This is information. That is what Tesla is seen as, not as a car company. But anything that the Democrats do education-wise is predicated on what the education unions want. Thus again, I'm talking about the unions because the unions control so much of the policy of the Democrat Party. They put so much money into the Democrat Party, they have a massive voice into it. And this voice is not a good thing. Let's see here. In 2022, the summer of 2022, the AFT and the NEA met, National Education Association and American Federation of Teachers. You would think that they would be talking about things like STEM and things like that. No, their focus wasn't on education in that sense, in any sense, really. Promoting racialized school policies is one of the things that they're wanting. Rather than taking responsibility for learning loss stemming from union-led school closures, the NEA convention focused instead on issues such as social and educational strategies to eradicate institutional racism and white privilege perpetrated by a white supremacy culture. NEA policy statement. Schools cannot make decisions on a colorblind or diversity-inclusive basis. They must put racial justice at the center of all decisions. Promoting gender ideology in the classroom and in sports, 2022. Both of these things you've seen recently. This is what's getting promoted by the Biden White House. NEA and AFT resolutions on gender identity. Laws that shield young children from teaching of sexualized concepts and gender ideology are bigoted and must be repealed. Laws that do not allow men who identify as women to play in women's and girls' sports are transphobic and must be destroyed. These are the people that are controlling our teachers. These are the people that are destroying our public schools. They wanted to destroy Betsy DeVos. Betsy DeVos and her husband created a charter school in Grand Rapids. This school, I wish I was 40 years younger than I am. I really do. I wish I was 40 years younger so I would have a chance of attending this school. Some of the students, the charter school is based around, or is actually at the Grand Rapids Airport, and it is based around the airline industry. Well, not the industry itself, but about airplanes. So these students are getting an education in aeronautical engineering. They're learning how to fly planes. Some of these students, when they graduate high school from this charter school that Betsy DeVos and her husband started, are graduating with a pilot's license that they got from going to this school. These aren't, and it doesn't matter what your skin color is to them. Seriously, it doesn't. Oh, let's see here. Here's another thing that the NEA and AFT did. During debate, one delegate favored spending union dues on a plan to investigate critics of the NEA, justifying as follows: you cannot put a price tag on truth. We have to know our enemies. Enemies? These are the people paying the salaries of the teachers. They are not an enemy. They are people that are having a disagreement with you. But to the NEA and AFT, these people are enemies. This is what's happening in our schools right now. This is what's happening in our schools right now. Other things that happened in the summer of 2022. Uh, they proposed a resolution that would change the language of contracts to replace maternity leave with parental leave and mother with birthing parent. They decided to create a climate justice task force and were votes to denounce the Supreme Court for overturning Roe v. Wade in support of packing the court, abolishing the Senate filibuster, and impeaching the 3 Trump-appointed justices. All of this is happening. They are trying to do all of these things. Lastly, NEA considered a resolution meant to stack the deck in local school board elections to combat parental influence. Seriously, this is what is going on right now in our school systems. Now, you take a look back at our founding fathers. We're going to go with Samuel Adams because I just got done reading a biography on him. Here's a man that you really should read up on if you haven't read up on him. Sam Adams was a proponent of education. He worked to get a public school system for the state of Massachusetts during and after the Revolutionary War. He also wanted to educate women. This was at a time period where educating women was just a not well thought of thing. But he had married 2 different women. He was not that good with money. That's one of the first things you'll find out about if you're reading up on Samuel Adams. He was not. His father was a really good businessman. His son was a good businessman. But he was not that good at business. Now, I am going to say this. I think part of the reason why he wasn't put in as good of a spot as he could have been is because his mother had a thing against lawyers. Now, never mind the fact that John Adams, who is cousins with Sam Adams, was a lawyer. Sam Adams' mother did not think that law was a good job, so he was unable. His parents decided not to allow him to become a lawyer. And I honestly think that was a mistake. I think he would have been far better becoming a lawyer. He was not that good with business, unlike his father. He lived off of very little money, and he also lived off of his inheritance from his father. And I think it would have been better if he had been a lawyer for those things. But he was always pushing education. He thought of education as a good thing. Liberals think of education now. He would have been considered a liberal of his time period. Now liberals are pushing ideologies. They're wanting schools to become these propaganda mills. And these kids, you see these kids coming out of these schools, they're celebrating terrorism. They're pushing for things that are going to destroy themselves, but they don't care. These kids are coming out of school not understanding what in the world gender really is. These unions have destroyed our education. Now, we still have an advantage. Right this minute, we still have an advantage militarily in this world. But because other countries are moving past us, they really are. They're moving past us. You see how China is controlling so many different materials that are needed for manufacturing. You see how Russia is controlling different chemicals that are necessary for manufacturing. Russia is hands down one of the greatest controllers of all things uranium, a very necessary item in the modern world. China controls rare earths. It's to a point where the US is so far behind and we can't catch up if we're focusing on these radical agendas. And that's what it is. They're radical agendas. Teaching kids, oh, you can be whatever you want to be. And you've got these kids. I listened to this girl. She didn't consider herself a female. She considered herself a demonkin. No kidding. She said that's what her gender was demonkin. Seriously? Okay, maybe she's an outlier because maybe she's one of the stranger ones. But how common is it becoming for these folks to think that they're a different gender? You take a look at the males that are competing against females in these sports. You take a look at all of this mental instability. If you're not giving these if you're not giving kids a disciplined life, okay, it doesn't have to be every minute of every day is disciplined, but unless you're telling these kids the truth and giving them a disciplined outlook on education, then these kids are far and away going to lead themselves into ruin. Now, okay, I will admit that we have allowed certain people to have power in this country, and it has damaged the future for these kids before they even get taught these weird things. We can fix it, they can fix it, but people need to learn. Now people go, "Oh, well you need a college degree." No, you don't need a college degree. Listen to Ron Paul when it comes to anything economics wise. I will guarantee you he makes far more sense than Ben Bernanke, who has an economics degree. And Ron Paul is a doctor. He's a OBGYN. He's delivered like something. He's helped in delivery of like 4,000 babies. But he also understands economics because you don't need a college degree with all of this stuff. You just need a curious mind. And STEM education is a valuable tool for males, females, whites, blacks, Hispanics, everybody. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. It doesn't matter what your gender is. STEM education is important in being able to move forward. What I always talk about at the beginning, which is moving forward. Of course, Biden administration, the NEA and the AFT, and all of these radical groups don't want kids learning STEM. Why? Because it causes them to think for themselves. It hurts their agenda. Because if somebody can think for themselves, then that means they start to realize that what they're being taught is full of garbage. Now, I got lucky. Now, I always go with the redneck thought processes on everything, and reading, writing, and arithmetic. Necessary classes. You need to be able to read, you need to be able to write, you need to be able to read and understand what you're reading, and you need to be able to do math because you need to understand science. You don't think that farmers don't understand science? They have to understand science far more than most people do. They need to understand meteorology. They need to be able to understand what they're looking at when they read or listen to anything dealing with what weather is coming. Why do you think the Farmer's Almanac has been so important for all these years for these farmers? They need to understand what's going on with the soil that they're planting into. And that means ag extension offices, they're getting their soil tested at these ag extension offices. Farmers that have animals need to understand animal husbandry. They need to understand basic biology to understand what's going on with the critters that they're raising on their farms. Being a redneck, you have to understand so many different things, and most people consider rednecks stupid. Well, let me tell you something. Rednecks have to get out here and understand what's going on. We have to know when to be able to harvest what we're getting. We have to know when it's coming time to get the hay up. We have to understand when the weather's going to be good enough to be able to do that, because you can't do the hay when it's storming outside. Not just because it's a pain in the rear end, it's also because you get hay that's too wet. When you bale it, it's going to start heating up on the inside, and it's going to cause fire in a barn or wherever else you're storing it. People don't realize this about the folks that do their food for them. They grow the food. Us rednecks actually have to understand far more than a city dweller does. Most city dwellers, all they have to do is worry about going to the store to get whatever they need. They need to go to work, and most of the time they ain't working at some job that requires them to have too much knowledge. And most of the time when they go to boat, they're not boating for the folks that they actually understand what the heck's going on. They're voting for folks that, whatever political party, oh, this person's promised that we're going to get all these benefits. If I lose my job, I can go on welfare. That's what you city slickers get to deal with. Well, us rednecks have to understand far more. So, this STEM education thing is idiotic. That they're not doing their job. But it's part of the whole NEA AFT problem. It is getting to the point that we have an education system that is no longer an education system. We need to fix this problem. It means getting the Biden administration out of office. Okay, if it's Trump that gets him out of office, fine. His policies will start turning the economy around. But let me tell you something. We need to look beyond this election. We need to start looking for the folks that we're going to put into office after this election. We need to keep finding folks to get into office that actually have the ability to do what is necessary, that will not vote for these radical agendas that are hurting America. And we need to study what is going on. Our founding fathers did. Our founding fathers weren't any smarter than us. They were just more determined. George Washington never went to college, and look how intelligent that man was. Now, one last thing before I leave you. Well, two things here. First off, If you like what you're hearing, like, subscribe, comment. Tell me what you think. Let me know what you think. Subscribe to my channel, whichever one you're listening to me on, whether it's Podbean. Will you follow on Podbean? Comment. I'm on YouTube or Rumble, whichever one you hear me on. Let me know what you want to know, what you want to hear about, and I will research it. I will get you the information. I've been doing that with past two podcasts. I have done an article giving you the information that I tell you, so you can go to my blog spot. It's going to be in my link tree down below. But I'm going to leave you with this. This is from George Washington's farewell address. And of course, I'm going to bring this up. This is at the end. Against the insidious wiles of foreign influence, I conjure you to believe me, fellow citizens, the jealousy of a free people ought to be constantly awake, since history and experience prove that foreign influence is one of the most baneful foes of a republican government. But that jealousy, to be useful, must be impartial, else it becomes the instrument of the very influence to be avoided, instead of a defense against it. Excessive partiality for one foreign nation and excessive dislike of another cause those whom they actuate to see danger only on one side and serve to veil and even second the arts of influence on the other. Real patriots who may resist the intrigues of the favorite are liable to become suspected and odious, while it tools and dupes usurp the applause and confidence of the people to surrender their interest. The great rule of conduct for us in regard to foreign nations is in extending our commercial relations to have with them as little political connections as possible. So far as we have already formed engagements, let them be fulfilled with perfect good faith. Here let us stop. Europe has a set of primary interests which to us have none, or a very remote relation. Hence, she must be engaged in frequent controversies, the causes of which are essentially foreign to our concerns. Hence, therefore, it must be unwise in us to implicate ourselves by artificial ties in the ordinary vicissitudes of her politics, or the ordinary combinations and collusions of her friendships or enmities. Our detached and distant situation invites and enables us to pursue a different course. If we remain one people under an efficient government, the period is not far off that we may defy material injury from external annoyance. When we may take such an attitude as will cause neutrality, we may at any time resolve upon to be scrupulously respected. When belligerent nations, under the impossibility of making acquisitions upon us, will not lightly hazard the giving us provocation, when we may choose peace or war as our interest, guided by justice, shall counsel. Why forego the advantage of so peculiar a situation? Why quit our own stand upon foreign ground? Why, by interweaving our destiny with that of any part of Europe, entangle our peace and prosperity in the toils of European ambition, rivalship, interest, humor, or caprice? It is our true policy to steer clear of permanent alliances with any portion of the foreign world. So far, I mean, as we are now at liberty to do it. For let me not be understood as capable of patronizing infidelity to existing engagements. I hold the maxim no less applicable to public than to private affairs, that honesty is always the best policy. I repeat it, therefore, let those engagements be observed in their genuine sense. But, in my opinion, it is unnecessary and would be unwise to extend them. That, ladies and gentlemen, should have been our foreign policy all these years. But we made a fateful decision with World War I. It was a bad decision in retrospect. Okay, everybody was pushing for it back then, but if they had known what it would have led to, And yes, I say World War One because of what we did in World War One, it created the environment that became World War Two. We were so busy trying to be the big dogs that we created a bad situation for all. But, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a good day. And this is Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Goodbye.